Hello everyone and happy Thursday. Welcome to this month's webinar, Building Program Champions in Higher Education, the second webinar in our Fundraising for Academic Leaders webinar series. My name is Christine Kim and I am the Intern Coordinator for the Sanford Institute of Philanthropy. I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, a couple of notes. This webinar will be conversational with the opportunity to ask questions during the webinar as well as a Q&A following the presentation. Please submit any questions you have in the questions box using your GoToWebinar control panel. In the days following the webinar, you will receive an email with a slide deck and recording to review again at your leisure. You've got a cause, learn how to fund it. At the Sanford Institute of Philanthropy, we enhance fundraiser skills so they can develop and sustain donor relationships to advance their cause in today's growing giving landscape through a proven contemporary curriculum, presented by world-class nonprofit leaders, best-in-class faculty, and renowned philanthropists. We want to recognize our important affiliate partners who provide training and education to fundraisers nationally. Check out the map to find an institute in your community. If you're on social media, please give us a shout out using the hashtag #SIPWebinar and tag us. Now I'm very pleased to introduce today's presenter, Kathy Drucquer Duff, CFRE, founder of KDD Philanthropy. KDD Philanthropy was born out of a desire to work with the professionals who build a philanthropic society. This vision was driven by Kathy's belief that philanthropy is one of the strongest forces for good in our world, and she has seen firsthand that a skillful fundraising program inspires incredible generosity. In her role as coach and consultant, Kathy helps organizations transform the way they practice philanthropy, grow talent, and approach the future growth of their organizations to inspire this generosity. As an executive at leading nonprofits in San Diego, Kathy developed deep expertise in the spectrum of advancement specialties, from alumni engagement and donor relations to principal gifts and strategic planning. Her tenures have included Associate Vice Chancellor of University Development at University of California, San Diego, and Associate Vice President of University Relations and Development at San Diego State University. Welcome, Kathy. We are so excited for you to be here today.
Great. Thanks, Christine, and welcome everyone. Thrilled to have you online today. I know several of you joined us last fall for our first session, and we're thrilled to have you back again. Our goal today is to talk about boards, talk about champions, and to have some dialogue around what makes a really good volunteer. So our agenda today, we will talk a little bit about advisory boards. We certainly want to talk about what are some critical components that we all should be considering when we recruit or retain sound volunteers. We're going to introduce something called the champion model and how that may or may not be appropriate for you. We'll talk a little bit about reset, where you start, and then what are next steps. I do encourage you as we go through today's conversation, if there are questions, I know Christine mentioned this, but I will try to get to them throughout the conversation and then at the end. You may recall from the fall, I like to start conversations with a reflection. We have two today. The first one, everyone has the fire, but it's the champions that know when to ignite the spark. And when I think about really good volunteer leadership, that's what they do. They ignite our sparks. They ignite sparks in others, and hopefully they bring people into our organizations to understand about our mission and to help move those missions forward. The second reflection, I'm going to guess that many of you on the phone today have said this. Everyone else has a board, so we need one too. This is something that throughout my career I have heard. When I was at UC San Diego, the team that I worked with, we had a total of 88 advisory boards when I came in to the position. And one of the things that we looked at is what is the effectiveness of these boards? How are we doing in role modeling with our volunteers? And so much of what I'm going to talk about today is my own experiences in working with volunteer leaders and working with a variety of volunteers in different ways. No question, the myth that is out there is that everyone must have an advisory board. And what I have found is that while advisory boards can be incredibly helpful, and I want to be very clear that I think in the right settings, our volunteer leaders are some of the very best investments that we can make. But I want to be clear about that, you'll see what I've written here. A philanthropy-focused board can be effective when members are both personally generous and they are willing and able to participate in introducing other potential donors to your cause and engaging them. And I would say that it is not, I often find that we have created advisory boards, or we have created what we call philanthropic committees, and yet we're not asking them. We're not being direct. We're not being clear about what their role is. And so much of what we're going to cover in the next hour and a half is really talking about what that clarity looks like. How do we create it? But the first thing is I'm going to give everyone on the line permission today that you do not need to have an advisory board. And you'll hear some of my rationale behind that and different ways that we can look at it. I am going to use two terms in our discussion today. One will be board members or volunteers, and then one is going to be champion. Whatever model you ultimately feel is best for you and your organization, hopefully the greatest takeaway from the conversation today will be, what is it that this champion is doing, whether they're serving in a board capacity, they're serving in a volunteer capacity, or they're a champion for you and your cause, your unit, your organization. I know we have a lot of different types of folks on the line today, so I will try to cover this in a meaningful way. But again, I'm giving you permission to think differently about how we work with our boards and how we work with champions. And so should someone be asked to join a board or to become a volunteer within your organization if they have not made a gift to your organization? And if anyone wants to chime in on this in the questions box, you are certainly welcome to do so. I have so often heard, hey, Kathy, we found this great person in the community. They're president of a bank. They're vice president of this organization. They're a leader in their field. They need to be on our advisory board. And the first thing I'm going to say is, has there been any discussion with them about philanthropy? And a lot of times, oh, that'll happen. I'm going to get them on the board. They're going to see what great work we're doing, how cool we are as an organization. And of course, they'll make a gift. That doesn't happen. In a lot of cases, that does not happen. If we don't have a conversation about philanthropy from the get-go, it is very hard to move people. And I'm going to say it does happen, but we do so much better good for our organization if we have a discussion about giving before we ever invite them to become a volunteer. So second, I think critical takeaway from the discussion is, if you are thinking that becoming a volunteer for you as a board member will move them to philanthropy, that doesn't happen if we aren't able to talk about giving in a meaningful way. So how do we talk about philanthropy? I think hopefully you'll recall from the conversation that we had this past fall is that in the donor cycle, it is really critical that we are able to invite people in and that we are able to talk about it openly. I'm going to guess that everyone on the phone today is on the phone because philanthropy is your great enhancer. Philanthropy is something that you as an organization need. Philanthropy is something that you want. It is one of the few ways that you are going to be able to continue to grow your program. So if we on the phone are not able to openly talk about philanthropy and why it is important, you cannot expect that folks that will join your board will be able to talk about it. They cannot be champions if they are not hearing that language from you, and especially from for our academic leaders on the phone. Really critical that how do you talk about philanthropy? And it's not something we introduce at meeting 3 or meeting 5 or meeting 7. It is really important the very first time that we meet with people, and we can talk about the great things our program is doing, but we have to be able to anchor in that philanthropy is something that is important to us. Philanthropy is something that is going to make the difference if we are a first of, a best of, an only of. Are we able to move a program from 5th to 3rd? Are we able to bring in new faculty. I mean, the list goes on of all the different ways. And so when we did meet in the fall, we talked about the concept of when we invite people in, it is something specific. It is something that is tangible. I know that you all believe in your cause. I know that you believe in your institution's mission. How do we get to that point where inviting others to become involved with us is actually something that's joyful and something that's fun? And I encourage you that when we can talk about how philanthropy will impact the work that we do, I think that we also see that others are eager and excited to join us. And it's that transparency at the beginning of the relationship. Again, whether you're on the phone today to learn more about establishing a board, or you're on the phone today because you want to hear more about the champion model, or you have a board and you're concerned about where you are, it is important to recognize that number one is that we are talking about philanthropy in ways that are meaningful. And so let's please invite people to join us on there. So before we start recruiting new folks to join us, it really is essential that we look at two things. What is it that you need? And usually when I sit down with a leader, the first thing I'm going to hear is, Kathy, we need to raise more money. So then what that means is I need someone on the board, or I need a champion that is going to be comfortable in talking about money, or they're going to be comfortable in inviting their friends to events. They're going to be comfortable in talking about what are the key initiatives that you are raising money for. And so I like to look at the composition and the skill sets. It is not uncommon that perhaps we want folks that are strong in public relations. We want folks that are strong in relationship building. We want people that are strong. If I'm creating a champion model for engineering, that they understand the work that I do. That to me is a natural, and it should come with that when you're looking at how do we create a robust volunteer board that is going to be supporting us philanthropically. But one of those key things, in addition to what they may be doing in their career or what they're doing as a philanthropist, that is an important piece. But let's make sure that part of that skill set is something that they believe in what we're doing, they enjoy what we're doing, and we believe that they can support us by making a gift. And not only supporting us in making a gift, but then being able to talk about that gift to others. We want folks that are going to make an annual commitment to something that they care about. So the first and foremost is that every person on the line today, you need to make a gift. And it may be that, if you're a dean, you have a lot of things that you're overseeing. I don't think you have to make a gift to each and every program. When someone will ask me, Kathy, have you made a gift to this program? What I'm going to say is that I am passionate about it. I have chosen to direct my philanthropy to this program within the institution. That comes across as sincere. It comes across as, hopefully it comes across as sincere. It comes across as genuine. So I'm not saying that you have to make it to each and every area, but it is really important that you are making a gift to something that you care about and that you are able to passionately talk about what that is. So that you can do that. And then in turn, we are asking our board members to be able to support, because when I, community member, ask my friend Jane, oh, I see that you are on the College of Business's board for such and such institution. Could you tell me a little bit about that? I don't want Jane to only tell me about what she knows about the College of Business. I want Jane proudly to say that she is a donor, because that is, again, role modeling behavior that we are going to want. To me, it does not matter if that gift is large. We obviously like large gifts more, but it doesn't matter if the gift is large or small. It must be meaningful to the person that is making the gift. And so if someone is able to easily write a check for $1,000 and they are not thinking about it, you've seen when that happens. They write the check, they tear it out, they give it to you, and they say, Dean so-and-so, here you go. Take this and use it as needed, or I want it to go to a specific area. My goal is always, I want someone to make a stretch gift. And when I say stretch, it means that I'm thinking about it. It's something that I am going to sacrifice, something to be able to move this forward. I think I gave this example when we were on the phone in November, that I often work with students, and I will ask students who are getting engaged in philanthropy to give up a Starbucks, one Starbucks a week. Asking college students to give up one Starbucks a week, to ask anyone to give up one Starbucks a week, is probably going to be a sacrifice. And that to me is the difference. Is I want, when I say stretch gift or I talk about sacrifice, I want it to be meaningful. So to me, I may have a member of the board who writes a check for $1,000 and someone else on the board that writes a check for $100,000. Is it meaningful to them? Is it something that they were able to think about? So when we think about your how you build champions, again, whether that be for a board or for the champion model, do they understand why philanthropy is important, and not because of need? I can't say that we need you to do something. What I want to be able to do is talk about how philanthropy is aspirational. How will philanthropy change the program that I lead? How will philanthropy shape a new program? How does philanthropy enhance a current program? How does philanthropy allow me to recruit or retain some of the best and brightest faculty in the industry? Being able to talk about the why in a conversational way is critical as we bring people forward. So the next piece, and some of you will have annual development plans that you work from, and some of you do not. And either way, it is important that anyone who is going to be a champion or anyone that is going to serve on a board, do they know what your goals are? We want to be extremely transparent in this next year. Our goal is to raise such and such, and if we are successful, it is going to do this. I want to be able to demonstrate impact. It is not about what that dollar amount is. It is about what is the impact that is going to happen from the dollars that we have raised. Trends, and sometimes this may be trends about our students. It may be that we are on a trajectory, if I'm a dean of engineering, that we are recruiting more women and students of color, and that in through philanthropy, it is going to enhance this trend. I may have a trend that's going backwards. Maybe I'm working in School of Nursing and we're seeing less students coming through. And so there might be a way that philanthropy is going to help impact or change that trend. So being able to tie trends into our fundraising goals are also important. When we talk about multi-channel activities, that is the different forums that we bring together in our units and in our college. There are going to be certain years that I may elevate one initiative above something else, and I need to be able to describe why that's happening as a leader. And then we're really extending again that invitation. Where can they be involved? What does that involvement look like? How does their involvement change, and how does it help our evolution to where we are going? Folks who choose to volunteer and join boards don't want to come and sit in meetings and be talked to. I have talked to hundreds and hundreds of board members, and what they tell me is, Kathy, I want to be utilized. I want to be utilized in a way that my contribution is going to make a difference, because there's plenty of organizations out there that are looking for volunteers to serve on boards. So this doesn't have to be the place I am. I can go anywhere. It is important that I am being utilized. So that's another, I think, critical takeaway, is we have a tendency to go in and talk to our boards instead of talking with them. And you'll see in a few slides how the champion model can help bring deeper conversation around. The other thing, it's really important that we are able to not only share what is our progress and how are we making progress, how have they contributed to that, or how can they contribute to that moving forward? And in this case, when I use the word contribute, sometimes that is going to be a philanthropic gift. Sometimes it is going to be if they've hosted something for us. It is really important that we are able to provide specific examples of ways that people can support our great work. So how do we empower these champions? How do we empower our board members? First of all, we need to demystify fundraising. Many of you participated in the November call to hopefully do that, to be more clear in what does the donor cycle look like and what is my role each step through there. So to be able to have if you're fortunate and you have a development officer, engage them in these conversations, have them do an anatomy of a gift, which is able to, you take a gift that has come in and you're able to show what are all the different steps that took place for that gift to happen. When we can demystify fundraising and we show that it's something that is truly conversational, people can get excited because they can see how they can be most helpful and how they can take their talents and their strengths and their desire to support you, and you are able to move it forward in a meaningful way. It is really important that we don't just talk to our boards about fundraising, that we meet individually with them at least once a year. I prefer quarterly, and you're going to see that in the champion model in just a few slides. But really important that we don't only invite them into group discussions, but that we treat them individually for the individual talents that they will bring to your organization. And then make sure that you are able to support them. And what I mean by that is often board members are going to, if they're going to be hosting events on your behalf, we need to have staff that can support that. So whether it's a dean's executive assistant, whether it's a development officer, if you have one, or someone within your development unit, a lot of times I think there's a misnomer that we'll just create this board and it's not going to require any additional resources. Volunteers, and especially those that are extremely effective in being able to talk about you, talk about your organization, talk about your leadership, talk about your mission, they are going to need materials to support them. And when I say that, I'm not saying to create a suite of collaterals. That is not what I'm suggesting at all. What I am suggesting is that we are able to support by giving them information, and that is done through conversation. So I'm not suggesting that anyone run out and create collaterals. I feel very strongly that we need to be the collateral. We're a walking collateral in the ability and the way that we set things. So another question that comes up is, hey, Kathy, we're thinking about a board, and we want to make sure that everyone is giving at the highest level. And what is that? What should that minimum level look like? There are boards that are highly successful in setting a minimum gift level, and there are boards that are highly unsuccessful in having a minimum gift level. When we say to people that we want everyone to do this at this amount, you are going to have people that just can't get there and are going to feel that their contribution is not worthy, and you'll have plenty of people that can make that gift easy. And they will think once they write that $500 check or that $5,000 check or that $50,000 check that they have fulfilled their obligation to you. And for those that can do much more, I don't want to set a minimum cap. I want to get to know them personally. I want to understand what their mission is. I want to understand why they agreed to serve. And I want to build an individual gift strategy each and every year that will allow them to grow their giving to the areas that they are most passionate about. So this will continue to be a great debate. I've given just my opinion. There's, as I said, you'll see there's times where it works very, very effectively, but in most cases, we agree that we are leaving money on the table and that we have not done an effective job in being able to describe impact, because a lot of times when I set a minimum level, again, I have to be in a position where I'm able to describe why is that gift level important? What is the impact? If we're asking every board member to do $1,000, how did we get to that number and why is it important? We need to be transparent with those who are going to be our greatest champions. So again, would think. Our next slide is a question. If people want to weigh in, we would certainly welcome it. Is it important? Or why is it important to have 100% of your board members giving? And this is another area that I often see different groups debating. It's, well, Kathy, we invited this person on the board because they're an influencer. Or we invited this person on the board because we think they have great connections. We invited this person, they're in a line of business that doesn't pay them a lot, but we think that they can connect us to folks. You can have people that are champions for you outside of philanthropic ways, and you do not have to invite them to join your board. I really think that we need to be honest that if our boards are truly philanthropic in nature, we need every single person to give. Because the same way I encouraged each of you on the line to give, when I can go out and say that 100% of our board supports us philanthropically, that is a very strong message. We know that people give to success. And when we're able to say that we have 100% board participation, that is demonstrating that we are successful. We are demonstrating that those people who have chosen to give their time and talent to us are also giving their treasure. That is a very important statement to be able to make to those that are considering to make gifts to you. It is an important statement. And so I would encourage you that if you currently have a board and your giving is not at the 100% level, what is the conversation that you could have? Do you have a board chair that can get up and speak passionately about why this participation is important and what that looks like? And I encourage folks who do not currently have 100% board participation to start making that part of your message. How are you going to bring that forward? How does this discussion, what does that look like? And then I like to make a goal over the course of a 1-year period that this is where we are moving to, and be able to talk very transparently about this. You will have some folks that perhaps are going to ultimately decide that they don't want to be on your board because they no longer, they joined it for another reason, and they may not want to be able to do that. So that's okay, but make sure that we're having fruitful, direct, but also compassionate conversations around this, about why this is so important to be able to move forward. So, Christine, I can see there's a question there, but I'm having difficulty scrolling into it. Can you read, if you don't mind, what that question is?
Yes, of course. So we have a question about how about board members who cannot financially give but are very good at getting others to give?
So, and again, it is not the amount that is important to me. It is that they have given. And so, and I love having influencers on my board, but what I want to do is to be able to sit down with that person, and I want to acknowledge the incredible contributions that they have made, how fortunate we are to have them as a champion, that they believe so much in our cause that they are going out and talking to others and influencing them to make a gift. That is incredibly important. And then I'm going to say, I would like you to consider a gift of any amount so that we are in a position to share that 100% of our board gives, because we believe that more people will give because of that. I don't ever want to be in the business of gift shaming. Anyone who chooses to make a gift to me of any amount they are making that choice. Now, I spoke earlier about the importance of, I look for those meaningful gifts, but if someone is overcommitted and they're involved in a lot of different things, maybe they're in an industry where they're not making a lot. Try the Starbucks example and use the example of we're asking, could you give up one thing that would allow you to make a gift? And whether that gift is $10 or $100, and I know we've got folks on the line that are very wide sides of the spectrum. So we've got folks that are asking for very large board contributions, and we have folks that are not asking at all. And so it really can be anywhere there. Think about where your own organization is, but it is the act of giving and being able to talk about that, in my mind, that is so important. So thank you. Really important question, because I know that we have people that bring different talents to the work that we do. I think what happens, though, is that when we rely a lot on those talents, and this is a good example because this is someone who is influencing and they are asking others, and so I applaud that. But it is not uncommon with a lot of boards that I've worked with, or a lot of the consulting I do when groups are looking to reset their board, that we're at 90% of folks that are not making a gift because this person, they're getting a hall pass for this reason, this person's getting a hall pass for that reason. And I'm always like, let's take a time out, because everyone can make a gift. It doesn't have to have lots and lots of zeros, but if they are making a statement that they believe in the work that you are doing, then I do want them to make a gift. So if others want me to expand on any of that, go ahead and answer another question. Christine, thanks for reading that to me. I appreciate it. But I would encourage you, for those of you on the phone, if you are not at that 100%, that one of the things that you may want to do after this webinar is to have a conversation amongst yourselves about what that could look like and how would you get there over a 12-month window. Do you have any influencers that are currently on your board that are giving, that could make the statement about why 100% is so important? I think when it comes from a development officer, it's seen as, well, of course you're going to say that because your job is to raise money. When it comes from the dean, it is, well, of course you're going to say that because your job is to spend the money strategically and in aspirational ways. But when a board member can get up and talk about the concept that I just shared, and again, if I'm having an individual meeting, I can say one of the reasons why we feel 100% board participation is so important is that it is setting up success. It is role modeling behavior we want, and it can be aspirational to those that we speak with about making a gift, that not only do I as the dean, have I made a gift, my development team has made gifts, and we have 100% board participation. Everyone in is all in. And now we're asking you to join us, or inviting you to join us. We're encouraging you to join us, however you want to set up that ask. And so I think that is something that is really, really important. So there are going to be some people who can never step into that fundraising role in a way that you would like them to. So is there a way that can be useful in other ways? And what I usually mean is that other way is maybe they're speaking in a classroom. Maybe they're speaking to students. There are other ways they can do that, and you will see when we create the champion model, and we're going to talk about an annual State of the Union address. They can still be included in that, so we're not exiling them off the island. There are still ways to be involved, and we'll get into that in an upcoming slide. Or is it a time to thank and release? And I know that word release can be a little bit cold. I have a lot of times when I am looking to release a board member, I will speak to the board chair about what that looks like and how we want to do this in a compassionate way. But that this is a seat at the table that could be filled by someone else. And I'm okay if my board is super small, but they're all making gifts and they're all role modeling the behavior we want. And you'll see that in a minute too. It wouldn't be surprising to me if we got a question today about what size board should I have? What does that look like? That differs. It really differs from organization to organization. So I usually hold back from saying you need to have this number or this number. It really comes down to, if you think about an earlier slide with staffing, what kind of resources do we have that will support a board in a meaningful way? So, and if people have questions about sizes or what some of that makeup is, go ahead and put a question in the chat box, and we'll make sure we address it before we finish today. So when we think about talking about our mission, and again, the last webinar was hopefully to help set this up, it really is important that any person, whether they are a board member or they are a champion for you, they have to be able to speak about your leadership, for my leaders on the line, about your unit, about the organization in a meaningful and compelling way. And one of the best ways to do this is to actually do an exercise where we ask people what are key words that they would use to describe our work. And if they had to then take those keywords, and I was getting into an elevator and I get on floor 8 and I see that you're wearing my institution pin, and I'm like, oh, I'm an alum from here, or I support this organization through the community, or I've always wondered more about what you do. Could you tell me from floor 8 to floor 1 in a compelling way what it is that we do and why philanthropy is important? So great exercise to do with boards and or champions is to find out what kind of language are they using, and then do some discussion around that. And what words do I use as the unit leader, or as a dean, or as a faculty member? What do I use as a development officer? What are we using for our boards and champions? It's one of my favorite exercises to do and can be very, very powerful. So we've spent a lot of time already on the webinar talking about the importance of our board members being philanthropic. So let's spend a couple slides talking about, if we're going to raise money together, what does engagement look like? And so I've already mentioned the importance that every board member is going to make their own gift. then I want my board members or our champions, I want them to talk about the fact they're affiliated with us, that they serve on this board or they're a champion for us, and be able to do that in a pride way. I want them to say, and one of the things I was so intrigued with is I joined this board for the School of Business, and I didn't recognize 100% of our accountancy students are hired upon graduation. Or in nursing, that 100% or 90% of our students pass the boards. Whatever it might be, we need to give them data points that they are then able to share pride in programs. Because what we find is after someone's attended one of our events and we've shared really some terrific stats about the work that we're doing and the impact that we have in the community, that they will pay that forward. They will share with others, and your board members will do the same thing. Oh my gosh, I was down at National last week, and I had an opportunity to hear from this faculty member who's teaching in their criminal justice program. I had no idea that this was going on. Those are the types of conversations that go on, and so I'm very honest with board members. Brag about us. Brag about us all the time. Post things on Facebook. Talk about the great things that you're seeing, because that then allows you to role model behavior. And when you talk about those programs, then also say that not only am I a board member, but I philanthropically support the program because of this. I want our board members or our champions to ask others, would you like to learn more? I just told you about the presentation I saw about criminal justice and what's going on at National. Would you like to know more? Because I got to tell you, I learned a lot, and I bet you would love learning about it as well. Are they in a position to direct people to where they can get that information? And then obviously, can they make philanthropic introductions? The last question that we answered talked a little bit about that, where you have a case where you have a board member who's making introductions to us. And so this is a list of things when I sit down before I bring someone in, and before I've asked them to serve as a champion, I'm going to ask, how do they feel about this list? Do they see themselves doing some of these things? And then I like to look at, what does your engagement look like? In addition to talking about us, could you see yourself hosting a salon event? Could you see yourself hosting? And the salon event usually is a small, intimate event where I'm going to have anywhere from 4 to 50 people, and it's going to be focused on a very specific topic. But anytime someone says, Kathy, I wish I could do more for your program, I think of, could they host something for me, and can they put us in their will? Because those are two very easy ways that you can do more for me. So I love when I hear, I wish I could do more. Guess what? I've got a way you can. So salon events. Can they invite people to tours? There's a lot of pretty cool things that are happening in each of your units and on your campuses. And can they invite people that will come in and see that? Are they willing to sign invitations? Are they willing to have the invitation go from their home address or from their personal email? Because I can tell you, as a lifelong development officer, it's hard to get people to open my emails. And deans and leaders on the phone, you have a better chance than I do, but I can tell you that your volunteers are going to have an even better chance of an open rate. So can I have them put their name as the invitation come from you as a leader, plus them as a volunteer board member or champion, emails, letters? Are they willing to do a peer screening? And a peer screening is when we sit down and we show them a list of anywhere between 100 and 1,000 names. Who might they know? Who could they introduce us to? What does this look like? And then can they help recruit others like them? And the good news is, if your board is made up of people who are giving, it is very easy for people who are giving to ask others to come on the board and give as well. And so I'm going to pay that forward, and I'm looking for some of the same people. So these are all a list of things that, again, you're going to see this list in a minute when we talk about the champion model. So what is a champion model? Because I tend to be more of an advocate that I would like to have folks who are going to go out and be champions for the programs that we are fundraising for, or the programs that I am leading. And so the next few slides are going to talk about what is a champion model, what does that look like, and why might we consider that instead of having a full-blown advisory or philanthropic board. So when I think of the champion model, it is about partnering with someone who is passionate about your cause. They want to serve as a connector. They want to be a conduit. They can be a role model. So the first and foremost is, you cannot be a philanthropic champion without making a gift. So let's talk a little bit about the harsh realities. The average board meeting, okay, if I'm getting ready and I've got 20 people that serve on my board, I am going to spend somewhere between 40 and 100 hours of dedicated staff time. And that doesn't even include the time of all the staff that I bring into that meeting, because I know a lot of, some of us have advisory board or philanthropic boards where our entire cabinet will be at those meetings. So this 40 to 100 hours does not include what happens at the actual board meeting. But think about 40 to 100 hours. That is a lot of time. The average one-on-one philanthropic meeting is 3 hours, and that is including the setting up of that meeting, any planning that I might do, the actual time that I have in that meeting, and we're seeing a real trend that meetings are no longer an hour or 2 hours. It's not uncommon to have a 20 or 30-minute meeting, and so we have to be really concise and make sure that we're on target in those meetings. But anyway, 3 hours is what we see for your average one-on-one, which means that you, for every board meeting that you are doing, you could conduct somewhere between 13 and 33 champion meetings in exchange for one board meeting. And I want us to think, what would that look like if I were able to get, let's just go with an average, if I had, instead of the time that went into a board meeting, and what do I think the return on investment is for that meeting, versus I was able to conduct 20 one-on-one meetings with people who are champions for what I do, and that they are champions and they want to host a salon event, that they're going to invite people to come on a tour, that they are going to really sit with me and strategize, whether they're sitting with the development officer, they're sitting with the dean or an academic leader, or they're meeting with both of you together. And however that there's different times and reasons why that would be appropriate. But that is a pretty big number. And so one of the things that I have encouraged organizations to think about is, rather than doing your 3, 4, 6 board meetings a year, could you do one state of the organization, state of the college, state of the unit? And so I really moved to this model back in, probably it was the early 2000s. I was asked to lead a fundraising initiative that had a board of 40 people. And of the 40 people that served on the board, the complaint that I got from the dean was, Kathy, there's only really 5 people in this room that are going to be able to help us raise money. The other 35, they like what we do, or we asked them too soon, or they're not going to make a gift. And so we made, over a course of a year, working with a couple of those key 5 people, we moved to the champion model. But for all those people that had served on the board, we didn't want them to just drop off, because they cared about our organization, but they weren't making a gift. And so what we did is we created a state of, in this case, it was a unit, it was a hospitality school. And we created once a year a state of the unit meeting, where not only did we invite those former board members, but then our key champions, and we'll talk a little bit about that model in a minute, those key champions also invited people. So we found that our state of the organization was actually 70 and then 80 and then 90 people. And we had a whole host of folks that we could then go out and have individual meetings with. Some were to move into a gift strategy immediately. Others where we asked them to be champions for us. And they were champions within their organization. They were champions within their own philanthropy. And so what I found with this model, and then we started moving it to several other of the units, is that almost everyone said, Kathy, this is a much better use of time. The champions loved it because they weren't going to a meeting, 4 or 6 times a year where they were being talked to, but instead in the one-on-one meetings, we were having meaningful discussions about how they could help move philanthropic initiatives forward, whether that was something that they were going to make their personal gift to. In some cases, they might be giving to a different initiative, but they still felt passionately and they wanted to help introduce us. So we use this group to test new ideas as we would be successful and raise money for one thing. Then we were looking at the next thing. Sometimes we'd bring 2 or 3 of those champions together. And so we were able to convert those 5 people that we identified as really caring. And then we were able to find another 5. So we had 10 champions. And then we had, again, anywhere from 60 to 90, 100 people that would attend this annual state of the organization or state of the union meeting. So I try to give a real world example so you can see how that translates. And in those meetings, we would share trends. We would have student presentations. We would have faculty presentations. We would have group discussions. And so we did some things that were more interactive while also making sure what are the really cool things that we're doing and how do we share that? And so I just asked the question, could you envision for your organization, and for those of you who don't yet have boards, how could you create this type of once a year meeting where you bring people in to learn more about you, and then maybe you identify champions from there. So it doesn't have to go one way or the other. There's lots of different ways to set up this model. And I always encourage, find your one. Find one champion, because one will turn into two, which will turn into four, which will turn into six. Building donor relationships, whether it's a philanthropic board member or it's someone that you are not looking from a volunteer perspective, that you are looking to build and make a gift and bring them in, it's one at a time. There's no magic pill that we can all of a sudden have 100 donors. And so we do it one relationship at a time. So whether, again, you choose to do it from the champion side or the board side, this is just something that we're throwing out there. Could you envision this? How would your time be utilized more efficiently and effectively? And they're both important. How would your time be utilized more effective through a champion model? Could you see your board members currently, instead of them coming again to these different meetings, could you see a way that they are more engaged because of that one-on-one dialogue, or that two-on-one or three-on-one dialogue? What do you think the return on investment would be? And for most organizations that I have worked with, that investment is, you start to see it at about the 6-month mark. You see another tick up at about the 12-month mark, and then another tick up at the 18-month mark. And what we're doing is we're being much more strategic in our discussions. I find that the academic leaders become much more conversational about philanthropy. I find that they get, going back to the reflection, they get ignited because these champions are so excited about what we're doing, and they want to tell others, and they want to bring people in. And so it really is another way of, quite honestly, it also builds comfort in becoming more conversational about philanthropy, because it's just so much easier to do in a one-on-one setting than it is to do in a large group. And so I also find that this is an area that can be very helpful. So what does a champion model job description look like? And it's funny because I've been talking about this for a while, and I had a client a few weeks ago say, Kathy, I need you to write me up a job description. I said, funny you say that, because I'm going to be doing a webinar on this topic, and we have that in there. So what does it look like? I'm looking for someone to dedicate 5 to 10 hours a quarter. And so what that means is that it's most likely going to be, I want to meet with them on a quarterly basis, whether, again, that's your development officer, the academic leader, the dean, to have conversations that are not only moving their philanthropy forward through a strategy, but to then how are they going to be engaged. And then I like to ask each champion, would you agree to do 2 or 3 engagements with us this year? And that can look like, again, you've seen some of these things on the list already in a previous slide, but will they host a salon event? And when they host something, that also means they underwrite it. So it's not uncommon that maybe I'll have 2 champions that will underwrite an event together. One will underwrite the beverages, and the other will underwrite the food. But they're going to you want it to be at a place when we do a salon event, something either a home or that is unique, that people are going to want to see. It might be in a club that's exclusive. I wouldn't otherwise be able to get in, because the hook is I need to get people there, and then I know what we're going to talk about. We'll do. But would they host a salon event? Talk about introductions. And it may be, let's say, again, I'm going back to the example of accountancy, that I might bring a list of the top, what we believe to be the top 25 alums based on title, and who do they know, and could they make some introductions for us? Will they attend a key event? And that key event would be that organizational State of the Union event, and could they bring 3 to 5 people with them, so that we are expanding our outreach of who knows about the great work we're doing and what that looks like. I've explained what a peer screening is, but will they participate in one? Will they write thank you? Will they make thank you calls? And you're going to see a slide at the end that talks about when our volunteers ask, the power of that. And so will they come in for an evening and make calls to all first-time donors, to all new donors, to people that have renewed? Will they write thank you notes? Again, very, very powerful. The best thing is if you have a board member that makes a phone call, I'm not asking for a gift in that call. I'm calling purely to thank you. That goes a long way. And I want you to think about things that you give to and how you would feel if you got a call from someone who was serving on the board of that organization versus a call from a staff person. It just goes a really far way when you have a board member. And so we've got folks that are comfortable making those calls. We give them a script. They run with it. They do great. Or they write thank yous. And we would give them some sample language, and they will send out 10 thank you cards or 15 thank you cards, whatever that is. And so it's also fun to bring champions together and say, we're going to do a champion thankathon. And we're asking all of those that are champions for us to come in on this afternoon. We're going to serve soup and salad, and we're going to write notes together, and we're going to tell stories about some of these gifts. Great way to, again, inspire and for people to think about what it is that we're doing. And I want them to be an advocate, but I need to talk about what does that mean to be an advocate. I want them, again, back to those pride points, I want them to talk proud and loud about the work that we do. And then I'm going to ask them to meet with me if I'm the leader of the unit, to be able to have conversations about how are we doing, what do they think of our philanthropic initiatives, and I do want to make there is a difference between an advisory board where you're looking to have people come give you industry advice to strengthen your program, and you can do the same models, but I think that's another place where we tend to we mix those populations and we get into trouble. So I recognize that some of you really do need and should have advisory boards that can advise you on trends and things that are going out in the industry. I really highly encourage you to make those different and not the same, because it's really hard for folks to understand the difference. And they're going to say, but I'm giving you great advice. So why? I thought I'm doing what you asked. And so again, then you'll see attend the annual State of the Organization event. So this is something you can take the slide and you can sit down with your champions or sit down with your board members and be able to say, this is what we're looking for. Can you see yourself in this slide? Can you see yourself on this list? What gets you most excited? How can we support you in doing this? But the champion, the job description really is something that we can't have written and not share it. And so you'll see on the next slide is, it is so important to set expectations. If we are a philanthropic board or we're asking someone to be a champion, let's be honest about why we need their help and what that looks like. And I know I've said that a couple different ways on this discussion, but it really is important. How we communicate and what fundraising will do, how it supports your vision, your leadership, for those that are leaders on the phone, and our academic leaders and our deans. Really important that you can talk about this conversationally and talk about it with pride. Talked also about the importance of training, and the training is a conversation. It's doing that elevator speech. It's giving them the tools they will need to be able to speak holistically about your organization and what that looks like. It's important, if you are not currently having discussions, what does a reframe look like? And sometimes I will go out to someone and say, we're in the process of evolving this board. We're in the process of evolving what our champion model looks like. And I would like to share with you where we hope to go. And could you be a part of that journey? Could you help move this board from A to Z? Are you willing to help move where the conversation has been here, and now we want to see the conversation go there? What does that look like, and can you be a part of that? And then fundraising can be learned. I know I've got plenty of folks on the phone today that probably, when they first took their role, was horrified that this was going to be a part of their role. And over time, hopefully you've learned, I hope, because I find this to be so joyful when we talk to people. And I love with the leaders that I've worked with that are like, Kathy, I'm not a fundraiser. I'm like, well, can we talk about that? And see, and over time to watch that they really look forward to going out on visits. They love having the conversation, and that they see it's not nearly as difficult as we thought it would be. Some of our champions are going to be more introverted, and that's okay, because they are also some of our very best fundraisers. They just need to know what it is that we expect, and that we need to be able to help them navigate what a conversation looks like and be able to help provide those tools. Don't just focus on those with the greatest wealth. Back to the question that was asked earlier, people connecting skills really are critical. And so if I have someone that they'll make a gift, it may not be the largest gift, but they're exceptional at bringing other people to the table because they believe so passionately in what we do. There's really, that's a huge, wonderful thing to do. And then we'd spent some time on the last webinar talking about the importance of invitation, and that really it's one part of the process. It is not all of it. There are going to be some people that just aren't good at asking. let's move them to another area, and let's not have them as our philanthropic champion. Let's look for another way in our organization that they can do that. And then this is a really important one that I think a lot of people don't ask the question. And if I'm sitting down and I'm asking someone to be a champion, or I'm asking them to serve on a board, I think it's really important that we ask, what other boards do you serve on? What other commitments do you have? And is this something, going back a few slides to that job description, is this something you think you can do? Can you give us 8 to 10 hours a quarter? Because I want to know, A, is there anything else that they're serving on that might be in conflict with what we're doing? And that doesn't happen a lot, but it's important to recognize. They can be totally over the top passionate about what we do, but if they can't give us time, then it's really hard to have them out. And we can invite them next year. It's okay. Let them off gracefully. Let them know that there's an opportunity in the future that will come around. So we know the core concept is we want to create a culture that will encourage, whether you have a board of directors or you decide to go with the champion model, that people are participating and they're in alignment with what your ambitions are, what your vision is, where you are going as a dean or a faculty member or academic leader. Where is it that we are taking this? So before we move into the third part of this conversation, one of my consulting colleagues, who I really believe in, Jason McNeil, he says, if we want to make the biggest, most positive impact we can, do good on the largest possible scale, focusing our attention on our behaviors and activities will reap the most significant rewards. This is the message to all of you on the phone, is that a lot of times we are putting time into activities that are not yielding a return. I cannot say how many deans and development officers I've talked to. It's like, Kathy, can we just blow the board up? I need to start from scratch. I need to look at a different model. This is not working for us, because they look at the amount of time they are dedicating and they're just not seeing a return on investment. And again, the whole reason that we have set up these philanthropic boards is because we are looking for partners. And we are looking for partners not to give us advice, but we're looking for partners that can help move our most important philanthropic initiatives forward. So I just want to kind of re-anchor that thought into the discussion. So I am going to guess that some of you on the line today have a group of some sort, and that you're recognizing we're going to need to do something different with them because we are not getting that return on investment. They are extremely time consuming. I don't have the staff needed. I don't have the resources, or I would rather deploy these resources in a different way that will allow us to bring a greater investment in. So when I talk about reset, it is how can we manage or change expectations. If you have a board, and a lot of folks that I work with have groups that they're coming together and they don't know that fundraising is part of their responsibility. First and foremost, it is really important. What is the one person? Do I have one person in this group that I believe could help be a partner in the change? Because when we go in as management or as leaders or as development officers to say, we're going to change this board, and I don't have buy-in, it is going to be an extremely painful process. And we don't need it to be an extremely painful process. So how do I find that one person? Hopefully it is my board chair. But if it is not my board chair, then I'm going to go to who is my greatest champion. And again, thinking about the champion model, how do I have someone who is willing to speak about philanthropy and giving? How could they, through a couple of conversations, could they speak about philanthropy and giving in a more meaningful way? Is my strategy that over the next year I want to reset my board, is my first quarter dedicated to really determining who on my current board do I think is a champion that can help move us to fundraising? Because when they get up, the same way that I used, I was very fortunate, one of those 5 leaders that I mentioned was going to be our incoming chair. And I spent some time with her, walking her through how much time we were spending how I thought if we changed that time to one-on-one meetings, what that would look like. And the reason that she was there, she wanted to see the school be successful, and she wanted to know that we were raising money in meaningful ways. And so it was through some conversations with her and then going through and looking at our board one-on-one, who could we meet with, the dean, myself, and this leader, volunteer leader, to talk about how we wanted to, over the course of the next few months, change the composition, to change how we were going to use meetings, to move to only one meeting a year and then do the State of the Union. Having that partnership was critical. And so I always encourage, if you're looking to reset, how can we do that? And again, they would have to have made a gift. And so being able to sit down and kind of move through them, I think is something that is very, very powerful. So the reset can really allow you to do that. If one of your leading volunteers isn't actively supporting your organization, what message does that send as you try this evolution? And so that's why it is so important to be able to have these conversations in a one-on-one way, to be able to move them. Whatever your job description is or whatever your bylaws, do they speak to fundraising or giving in a clear way? And are we talking about what engagement looks like? And so when we were moving to a much greater engagement model, when I was over at UCSD with our big board, we first met with some of our key folks to talk about what do we think is a reasonable request to ask our board members. And so we started with one. Could every single person on this board commit to one engagement outside of coming to meetings this year? And then if you go back a few slides, and it was, would they host a salon event? Would they do a peer screening? And we were like, one seemed really small. But that first year it was tough because we were moving the model. The next year we went to 2, and then the next year we went to 3. And that 2 to 3 is what I have found for most groups is pretty manageable, and your volunteers can see how they can do that. So making sure that we can look out. But when you look at however you're describing what it means to serve on your board or to serve as a champion, are you doing it in a way that they can see it? I want to give them something that's tangible. I want to give them something that they can truly see. We have about 8 slides that are left, and so I'm going to encourage that if you have questions that you would like to ask, if there's anything that we have shared that you are looking to get additional clarification on, now would be the time to start filling up that chat box or the question box, so that Christine can help us make sure that we answer any questions, comments, concerns, to make sure that this session is giving you what you were looking for, and being able to do that. It does take some patience when we decide that we're going to move and either start a new board, because we haven't had one, that we want to have a champion model, or we want to reset our board. It really is important that we have a reasonable timeline. And that's why a lot of times I will say, let's look at this over 12 months. Can we break this into 4 quarters? What would success look like for quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4? So that first quarter is really going to be a discussion, if I'm the development person, with the dean or the leader that I'm staffing. And let's have a conversation about who do we think our greatest champions are, or even, okay, after this webinar, what model do we want? And let's have some conversation about that. And then who do we believe in our current structure, our current volunteers, who do we think can help move that? Who do we think can help us with that discussion? And then what does your second tier of movement look like, your third tier? And then the final tier is usually, is there anyone that we are going to thank and look for another way for them to be engaged? And so recognizing that these things, it does take some time, but those, if we do the time in an effective way, I think we have a much greater chance of getting there. I added this slide because I was on a recent client site, and we had a discussion about that they had asked their board members 6 months previously to do something, and then they ended up asking them to do something else, and they never closed the loop on that first thing. And so if I ask someone to consider being a champion, it's really important that I go back and I finish that dialogue. If I ask someone, would they be willing to host a salon event, and they say yes, I need to go back and work with them on what the theme is, what is the date, and what is that going to look like? How is it going to support our vision? How is it going to support our initiative, et cetera, et cetera. When we do not complete what we have asked for, especially with those who are champions or board leaders, they will start to, it undermines what you do. They start to question what their contribution is, and they start to question what is the direction that we're going in. Once we start to get that in their mind, it is really difficult to recover. So I would really encourage that think about what are the requests that you have put out on the table so far, and what steps have we made to make sure that we are reporting back out on that. So whether that's an individual thing or we've asked our board as a group to do something, how are we holding them accountable? If we're asking someone to sign up for everyone this year to do one engagement, we want to share out at our meetings that this is the progress we're making with this engagement. This is why it is important. This is what is happening, so they can see that difference. Again, we talked about the importance of success. Really, really important that we are in a position that we can do that and demonstrate that success so they see it. So I added this slide because of a conversation that I had recently, and it kind of raised a flag for me that I often see that we aren't looking for ways to be able to move that forward. So looking at that is key. All right, sorry, just pushed the wrong button there. So how do you find board members? How do you find champions? Sometimes they self-identify. And the ways that they self-identify is they make a gift. So they might be a brand new donor. They may be a loyal donor. And I encourage you to look at both of those lists and see, is there something that would be helpful? And being able to look at that. Sometimes they self-identify because they are new to the community. And I really want to hit on this, is I think it's really important, especially for some of our larger shops on the phone that have research, is are we paying attention to who's moving into our community? Are there any industries that we partner with that regularly are bringing new people in, bringing new leaders, new folks in? Because a lot of times folks that move into a new community, if they have a commitment to higher education, we are the place that they want to be involved in. And so sometimes if you get a call and it's just like, hey, I want to know more about your program, I was hoping you could add me to a mailing list. That's someone I'm going to do a little research on. If I don't have a research department, I'm going to do the research. It takes 5 minutes to Google and figure out who they might be, because they can be some of your very best people. If you are, I mentioned accountancy, I've mentioned nursing, I've mentioned that there's all kinds of hospitality. Who are the industry leaders, and can we invite them in? I look for people that give to similar causes. So if I am in engineering, and I'm invited to a robotics conference, I'm going to look at who else has been invited, and do I think there's people in that room that have the potential to partner with me? And so you really can find them everywhere. If anyone has suggestions outside of this list, please go ahead and put it into the question box, and we'll read it out at the end of the webinar. It is so much easier to find people than we think. The first one is the hardest. But once we've got that first person, because usually someone who comes on, they're going to say, hey, have you thought about someone from this industry? Have you thought about this? Or, we serve this region. Have you thought about that? There, a lot of times we'll have great ideas. And so that's one of the questions I will always ask is there someone that you know that we should know? Is there someone that you know that if we were to introduce them to the work that we are doing, could you see them being engaged with us or involved? So this slide is also a great slide to sit down and kind of have a discussion, whether it be with other people within your office, if you have a development person, let's talk about, could we pull all new donors that have given to our area in the last 18 months. And let's see, let's do some profiling and let's just do some Google search really quick and see, is there anyone that jumps out? Could I pull a list of anyone that's for some of the more mature programs that have been giving for 10 years? And for less mature programs, maybe 5 or 3 or 2. But once we get past that second gift, and that's where it's really important, is we love our first gifts, but we have to be able to keep them past that second gift. That's where you really start to see the loyalty build, is do we have loyal donors? So whatever your pattern looks like, but being able to pull people that have been loyal and generous is a great way. But anywhere on the slide, I would encourage you to use this slide as something that you can talk about to help you identify people that you are looking for. All right, so I just went through that.
Hi,
So there's your
Kathy.
list to be able
We
to give.
have a
Yeah,
we have a clarifying question from someone. They want to
yeah.
know, would you advocate for separating the advisory board from the philanthropic board? Or are you imagining those boards to be one?
I am absolutely advising that they are two. If I understood the question right, one is more your advisory board and one is philanthropic. Did I get that right, Christine?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, yeah, yes, I absolutely advise that they are separate, and I get it. There are times where we want those advisory boards, and they are incredibly invaluable. And what I have seen done well is if you have a couple that could serve on both, is maybe you ask one of them to be a liaison. So and from the advisory board standpoint, the other thing I'm going to say, and I'm sorry for my genes on the phone, you may not like this, but I'm going to say that I do not want development staff involved in an advisory board in any way, shape, or form. And the reason for that is if it is truly industry coming to give you advice on things that we can do to be better, that what we need to see in the classroom, how we are recruiting students, how students are being recruited out upon graduation or for internships. In my mind, that is not development work, and I think we have to draw a line there. Where you want your development officer spending time is really on that philanthropic, and I know that is a painful shift for some of you. It's something when I was at UCSD, we went board by board, dean by dean, and did this because we really wanted a development person is such a limited commodity that we need to know that as much of their time is being spent on building relationships and moving donor strategies forward. And if we have them involved with boards that are only advisory and are not philanthropic, you lose such an important part of a very limited commodity. So that's why I say it. And if anyone would like to bring things into the chat box on that, happy to address it. And again, that's why one of the reasons why I came up with the 12-month model to make some of these shifts was that we had some situations where that we didn't want to cut off what the good partnership that we had, but we wanted to be really transparent and really honest about where a fundraiser should be spending their time, because at the end of the day, that person is hired for two reasons. They are hired to build relationships on behalf of the university or the college with that relationship, number two, then moving to a philanthropic support. And we know that not every person will move there, but that is the intent of why we have development officers, is purely to build relationships that will move to philanthropic commitments for your areas and units. So, Christine, thank you for bringing that question. I know I answered a couple different things. A core concept: people give not because we have needs, but they give because we meet needs. And I want to continue to encourage you to think about, what are your needs? How do we meet them? And champions want to help you meet them. So again, whether you select that you feel an advisory board and I like to have the word philanthropy in there. So whether it's a generosity board, it's a philanthropy board, it's a development board, a development committee, you can decide what the language is. But I think that when we are clear with that word in the title, that is meaningful. So whether, again, you decide that you want to go the board route or you want to go the champion route, either way, it's how do we help these champions, these servant leaders, how do we help bring them so that they are able to support us? So I mentioned this slide previously, and for those of you, Penelope Burke has some great data if you're looking to read and learn more about just donor-centered fundraising and what it means to really have a good donor relations and how we create experiences for our donor. But I loved this, that she said she has a study, and she does a study every other year. But after receiving a thank you call from a board member or a champion, it can be either one, 93% said they would definitely or probably give again if they were asked, that 84% would make a larger gift, and 74% would continue to give. This is the power. And so going back to that first slide where we talked about myth versus fact, I don't believe that every single group needs to have a philanthropy board. But I do believe that you need champions. And sometimes you can get really good with that champion model and then move it to a board model. Or if we need to shift our board model, we are able to then move away from that. So either way, again, whatever model, but it's really important to recognize that when we use our leaders effectively, when we are able to use them, and 100% of them are making a gift, and then they are able to role model behavior you want, and they're able to think in really impactful and in important ways, you will see the return on that investment. But we absolutely have to make sure that we're paying attention. And so I just think that this piece of data from her study is an absolute wake-up call to, are we using people in the right way? So another core concept, your board members or champions can be a huge help, and I really mean a huge help in expanding your donor network, and they can help us build new and important lifelong donor relationships for us. But that doesn't happen if we don't have honest conversations about what this model looks like. Again, whether you choose board or champion, are we being very transparent that the work and the partnership we want with them is to grow philanthropic support so that we are in a position to do the things that our mission so boldly moving forward wants to do? Are we giving them the tools? Are we able to give them some foundational training on fundraising? And are we giving them the motivation to get excited about the right thing? And so this is one that I would ask every person on the line today. What is one thing? What's one thing that you can take from the discussion today, whether it's I'm committed to having the discussion, or I want to look at who is my top champion, or I want to think about a champion job description and what that looks like. Whatever it may be, is important. So what one commitment, and if you just want to scratch something down right now, if anyone wants to share with us what that commitment is, we would welcome it. I always like to see those. You can type it into the question box. I think it's helpful to be able to share. And before we move to any additional questions, communicate. We want to communicate your passion clearly, concisely, and with genuine conviction, especially for our faculty and for our deans, our academic leaders on the line today. People look to you. The work that you are doing and leading is amazing. When you're able to share with donors and prospective donors with conviction that this is important and how philanthropy is going to change this, so important. I chose part of the slide because Richard Branson is a philanthropist. He is someone that gives freely and often to the organizations he supports, but he will tell you that is often because he gets to sit down and have a conversation with leaders of the organizations he supports, and he hears directly from them, what is the mission? Why is my gift going to make a difference? What is important about this gift? How will your organization look differently 6 months from now, 6 years from now? I really want to know about the impact. Those are things that he sits down on a regular basis. So I think he's a great role model to be able to see things that we have done well. So at this point, Christine, if you could let me know, are there questions that have come up that we have not yet answered?
Hi, Kathy. Yes, we have lots of questions. Everyone is very interested in the champion model. And we also have some commitments coming in as well. Of someone said a commitment they want to have is to show results of the gift that people are giving or that they are giving themselves. And then
if I could just make a quick statement on that, it is, I mean, again, the art of role modeling is so powerful. And so when you are able to demonstrate how a champion or board member's gift has made a difference, and you're able to do it in that form as long as people are comfortable with you publicly sharing, it will move other people to think about their own commitment. So thanks, Christine. I'll let you keep going.
Awesome. We have some questions on, you mentioned the champion job description and that model, and someone is asking, are the champion boards formalized in some way within the context of the institution? So do you put forth formal bylaws for that champion model or board?
Great question. So, and that really depends. And the institutions that I've worked with, sometimes you'll have what I call the big board. The board is up for the institution. So if I were to take, my work when I was at San Diego State, we had something called the Campanile Foundation. And so for that group, there were bylaws, and there's all kinds of things that go along with that. Then we had a lot of subgroups, and it may be that the School of Arts and Letters chooses to have a philanthropic board, or the School of Hospitality has a philanthropic board. A lot of times what I like to do with them is not so much bylaws, because with the champion model, the slide that I gave you, it has those different things that we would like you to be committed to. And then we will ask them to sign something that says, your intent is to do these things. I have seen groups where you will create very formal bylaws. here's the thing with bylaws is they usually have to be updated, and that is also time consuming. And so for our fiduciary board or governing boards, absolutely imperative. But in this case, and again, this is just one person's opinion, but I think that we can be, outside of those two situations, I think that we can be more informal in a 1 or 2 pager that says, these are the expectations. Are there anything that you have concerns about? Where do you see yourself fitting in best? So if I'm talking to someone where it's, Kathy, I live in a condo and we don't have space where I could ever do a salon event, I might say, well, would you be interested in underwriting with someone else? Sometimes we have people that have great space, but they're looking for someone to share duties. Would you be willing to do that? Or it may be, I'm just not comfortable getting up and speaking in front of people, and that's that introvert. Are you comfortable making phone calls? Are you comfortable writing thank you notes? Would you be comfortable sitting down with me and looking at a list of leaders? And so I want this to be really conversational. I don't want it to be, hey, you might be a good someone to serve on our board, and can I send you our job description? Nuh-uh. You want these meetings to happen in person. You want to see body language. Because this is someone the same way I'm building them towards a donor strategy. And so maybe they made a first gift and they made this gift of $10,000 and that's how they identified it. So, wow, this person don't even know who they are and they just made a $10,000 gift. I want to go out and meet with them and understand their motivations. And if I think that once I've talked to them, I've learned about them, and I talk with the dean, I think this could be a great champion, then I would embark on that conversation. So I do think that having something in writing, because some people are auditory, some people are visual. And for my visual person to be able to give them something, but I'm not emailing that to them, I'm not sending it to them without a conversation first. So really important that, again, don't hide behind the job description. Don't hide behind the collateral. You are the collateral. Have that discussion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have someone wondering, for this model, champion model, you did mention and clarify that you are imagining a philanthropic board and an advisory board. Would you use this model for both types of board? If one is at a college level and the other is at department level, would you still use the champion model for both boards?
Yeah. I mean, champion model, and I use it in lots of different ways. So a lot of times when I'm working with a client and they're thinking about a campaign and they're not sure yet how they're going to get there, one of the first things I'm going to ask is who are your champions, or who could be your champions? So yes, you can use this model for advisory boards. You can use it for campaign committees. And sometimes it's this next year, I want to identify 5 champions, because next year I'm hoping I can convert 3 of those champions to join the campaign committee. Or if I wanted to do a philanthropic board, I could convert them, because maybe this is new. Okay, I've got a brand new dean. We haven't had anything, and our university president or university chancellor said, hey, you need to have a board. Again, this happens a lot where they're like, you need to have a board. And my question always is why? Mm-hmm. Why? What is my desired outcome? So you can use the champion model as a building process. It's because I know there are some universities where it's a mantra that every college or every school has to have a board. And so if you're brand new, I would say, can we take this year to build champions and then convert those champions, the ones that do well? We would like to invite them to join a board in a year's time. So it's a great building block process. If you are starting from scratch, it is also a great building block process if you need to reset. And you might keep your one board for the year, but on the side, you're building champions, knowing that you're going to convert.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned when someone is asking you and asking for your advice for a campaign, someone asks a question, it would be, how would the role of a champion differ between a finite project-based opportunity, such as a campaign, versus a larger ongoing academic program initiative?
Yep. So I think a lot of times we need to look at it is what are we looking for? It's not unusual for a board that they have 3-year terms and then maybe they can serve more than one term. I think it's important with the champion model also that if maybe I'm launching a new initiative, okay? So we are going to fundraise for a scholarship that will support students in a particular area, and we know that it's probably going to take us 5 years to get to whatever that amount is. I may ask someone once, we've started working together and they're enjoying it, because that's part of it too. It's hard to ask someone, hey, can you be a champion for the next 8 years? That's what our campaign is, 8 to 10 years. But once we've got that 1 year under our belt and we've had some experiences and I see how do they do and they see how do we do, then to be able to say, we've really enjoyed this, and you have really made a huge impact on our work. Would you consider being a leader in this for this initiative and signing on and helping us over the next whatever space of time? So this again, it allows you to build upon and look at foundationally. And so I like to be very transparent that we anticipate that this campaign is going to be 10 years. Right now, we're looking to bring champions in for the first year to help us grow our philanthropic volunteer program. Is this something that you would do? And then be able to, if they do well, ask them to extend or to continue or to take on a more meaningful role. There's a lot of different ways that you can package that.
Great. And then we have time for one last question. And this question is, I think you probably get a lot, is what if the board members say that they don't need to give because they're investing their valuable time already and that is their contribution?
Yep. And I always want to thank them because their time is an incredibly valuable contribution. And what I want to say is, could we explore some additional ways that, not additional time, but additional ways that you could make that time commitment? And then I want to be able to talk about what that is. And so additional time, it may be that they're a great advisor. Okay, maybe they're in a critical industry that we need to have strong relationships. And so what I may say is, would you be comfortable in converting this relationship from one that is board to one that we would come out, the dean and I would come and meet with you a couple times a year, and maybe you bring others from your industry or others from your company or others from whatever it is to talk about this. I don't ever want anyone to be devalued because they're not making a gift. But again, if I'm looking at that any gift is good, right? Because we talked about earlier with that influencer who was not in a position to make a gift. But if they can make $100 gift and do the influencer, or in this case, they're a great advisor or whatever it is. And that's the other question, is sometimes people are going to tell me, Kathy, my time is my contribution. And I look at their time and I'm like, the truth of the matter is we're getting no value from that time. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is that this is taking a lot of my time to be able to make them feel good. And that is not a match. And that's where we need to have honest conversations between development and our leadership about how could we make sure this is a value proposition that works for all. Because there are people out there that want to volunteer. There are people out there, their company requires they volunteer. And yet, if we're not the right value add, then let's figure out where else in the institution they can be. Because if we're truly about raising money, we have to be honest about that. But again, I don't want them to feel devalued. I want to be able to show that as we continue to evolve, their contribution of time would be more valuable here. And could we talk about that?
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you everyone for your participation in our Q&A and for your incredible questions. Reminder that you will be receiving the slide deck and the recording and the follow-up email in the next few days. So, sorry about this.
Well, and I just want to add my thanks. So I'll let you go through the final slides. And there is a contact slide. If anyone has additional questions, you're welcome to reach out. My email is included on there.
Perfect. And then, yes, of course, as we said, Kathy's contact information is available on the screen here, and you will be receiving this information when you get the slide deck and the follow-up email. And Kathy, just again, what is one important takeaway that you would like our webinar participants to walk away with today?
Yeah, I think it's think about what that next step is. There are so many different levels of where you can go with a champion or board. And so take the time for one commitment, but it's okay. Start with where you are and set what is that goal for the next quarter and the quarter after that. When we do this in bite-sized pieces, it is so much easier whether we want to build a board, that we want to look at a champion model, or we're looking to reset one step at a time.
Thank you so much, Kathy. So, have we left you wanting more? The second edition of Cost Selling, A Guide to Relationship-Driven Fundraising is available now on Amazon and Kindle. So you can go to costselling.org to snag a free first chapter today. Don't miss our next webinar on March 18th. Francisco Martinez will be presenting on the topic, Setting Up Your Approach with a Digital Twist. You can register today. And thank you again to our audience for your time and participation. To help us continue to improve our monthly webinar series and ensure we are providing value to our audience, please take a few minutes to complete our survey. In closing, enjoy the rest of your day and thank you for all that you do to better the communities in which we live, work, and play. See you on March 18th.